said that development is not necessarily a negative thing. I think that through development, you just or be open to one another. You can develop all kind of ideas and develop. So, listening to you, and you put more emphasis on cooperation, but at the same time, I think that development or helping to the development between people, states, government, I think it's not negative. It's a matter of how you approach it and how you deal with it. Of course, you don't have to come with like superior point of view, like was in many times in history. We come to develop the primitive societies or something like that, but of course to respect. But I see a lot of positive things in development, and it's like mobility. It's development. It's like moving words. I don't know how you describe it, but it's like mobility. It's very positive, with a very positive touch. And I think that, of course, cooperation and development and helps mobility be more and more positive. So, it's kind of philosophical, but when there is a mobility, and we do have cooperation between NGOs and state and NGOs and people to people, of course it helps making the whole society better.
So mobility is about improving.
This is
changing.
This is my own interpretation. As I mentioned, mobility, I look at it as very positive, because it's really how you make it. And if you decide to make it as an improvement, it will be such, to take the positive from mobility, because it's very easy, as was mentioned before, we are in mobility in life. I chose this career. We move from one place to another. It's very easy to feel lonely. It's very easy to think of, I'm not as other people, I don't have the same culture, I have the same mentality, I don't understand what we're saying, I don't understand the motivation. It's very easy to go to that direction. And if you choose to take the different kind, to choose what is similar, how can you cooperate? How can you motivate people to do better for both society? I think that it brings positive interpretation to mobility. It's very easy to go to, I'm a foreigner, and I don't have to go to mingle. I can, I'm representing my state, so, it's very easy to be in such a place. But if you, I totally agree with Ambassador, if you don't make an effort to be part of the society where you serve, so I think you do wrong.
Mobility works backwards, forward and backwards, unless there's special appointment. Do you care more, I should say, about people to return to Latvia, being remobilized, if you go to Latvia, including from the Mediterranean?
I was thinking about, like I said beforehand, everybody is right, asking her, what are you doing around, and to be around. And the worst part of it is that you're never exactly wrong with her. There is some collective responsibility, and then there is the individual responsibility, which for Protestant people, which we used to be, is very important. You have some duty to develop your talents. And so I have all this in me, but maybe because I was born abroad, I have in me this kind of order of the world that I like Latvians, yes, to be around, but then you come and cultivate your garden. Development is needed in Latvia, but the people, very well what it means, and people like you are just needed much more than somewhere else, because somewhere else you're just one out of the numbers. Here you're one of us, that's the difference. But morally there is no problem, just we Latvians need you here. This is my point. So my movement has been around, and I go back to my garden, it's here, and this is where I am mostly useful. I remember that I was still ambassador to Paris when Chirac I had finally managed to open a museum for primitive arts. Primitive arts is nothing primitive. I remember the Minister of Culture, André Marot, when I was young and I was listening to the television, he was saying primitive arts is Botticelli of those days. So there, it's primitive doesn't mean anything bad. But I was wondering, I got out of it and I was thinking of Socrates, know yourself. I mean, here I went there, I saw an Assyrian costume of 6,000 years, or I don't know how many thousand years ago, with a veil, so much before the Muslim, etc. Very interested, and I was almost interested, but I was thinking to myself, no, after all, what I need to know better is ourselves, myself, my people. Not that there was anything bad with that, but I left this wonderful museum with a total, not a negative feeling, but a sense of vacuum. That it was one president who loves primitive arts from everywhere and Putin sending very regularly gifts of Siberian primitive arts, etc. But is it what we need mostly? When we see the results maybe of the elections at the end of the week, we should better understand what is Europe, what we are. Their mobility is important. I remember, if I may, it's a digression, but Jewish mobility is very impressive. We owe them and the Inquisition somehow that they were spread all around the Mediterranean Sea, but they were brothers. So the bank system started with them because they signed something, they had the money, and the brother there in Italy or Greece will have the money, etc. And that's how credit actually was starting. And then, to finish with Turkey, this is not my idea, but it is Edgar Morin, who was born actually in Nahum, a French thinker, and wrote about his father, who was a Jewish from Thessaloniki, or Saloniki, until the First World War. There were half of the city was Jewish, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And they spoke their old Spanish language, Latino. So it's something fantastic. Ladino, not Latino, Ladino. And so it's an old Spanish from the 15th, 16th century, etc. And he describes how some Jews were from Spain, the Sephardi, to Italy, or to Greece, where they were in Macedonia. And then some of them who were in Lombardia went further to Thessaloniki. And because there had been the beginning of the ideas in Milano, for example, of state cities, of democracies, these Jews brought these ideas with them, ideas of democracies, to Thessaloniki. And so in the 19th century, the Jews of Thessaloniki were thinking in that way, and that's where Mustafa Kemal Atatürk lived. The young Turks from Thessaloniki learned these ideas from the Jews from Thessaloniki. So those people moving were created. Actually, there you have networks of people and you have ideas going around. This is where movement is important. So Latvia is belonging to Europe because there was this network of Catholic religion and the Protestant religion, and we're still belonging. Imagine how long it stays then, this movement. The borderline of the European Union, Papus Lake, and except Abraham, we can discuss about them, but so it's the eastern border of the European Union with Russia. It has been established in 1238, if I'm not mistaken, when Alexander Nevsky won against the German order. But this is a border between Western Christianity and Western Christianity for 800 years. So movements and borders establishing the end of the movement are everything that we are. So it is, when I was seeing the film, really, you were asking me, I was thinking individuals, but they are the results of a long history of movement. And so we are Latvians because we had Germans here bringing European ideas, and we are voting now because there was Bishop Albert who came here, etc. So I see history and my own life is a kind of continuity. Nothing simple maybe, but that's my kind of answer.
That's impressive.
At the end of the day, we need to thank Queen Isabel for reporting this in 1492. It's so romantic. We gave her a very romantic picture. I just want to remind everyone that it's a very painful chapter, which unfortunately didn't finish with Queen Isabel. But yeah, this is mobility. What do you do with you're forced to live? You were not allowed to have land. By the way, we talk about nomadic people, and we have several nations that are nomadic. The Jews, by definition, could not, by law, could not have land, could not have a place where their own. So they had to be mobilize all the time to move from one place to another. And then when they were settled, they were moved from one place to another by law. This is about freedom, by the way. So they were mobilized, but no freedom there. What did they do with it? How did they react? So they were deported from Spain. So where did they go? What did they do? It's very interesting, but it may start with something very negative that follow the history of the Jewish nation, but
it has influenced the whole history.
Yes, well, it
banking system, etc.
Yes.
So it's very common. You have the Phoenicians, now you have the Lebanese people, fantastic nation. They are everywhere around, everywhere. All kind of nice people, so nice,
Smart.
so sweet, smart, yes, making money. And so there are, it's part of history going on. So we have a Latvian nation with an identity quite established for maybe 4,000 years, and that's our language. I'm used to it, I love it. But we have to think still in the sense of movement. Still, where I see where the individual is stuck. This is when he's too much in movement in the globalized world, on the internet, etc. You know, it's better, and this is where I see my own work. The main role of here the Latvian state, but of any state, to give the possibility for those people to maintain their sense of belonging. Because when it's globalized, to belong to somewhere is a stabilizing value. So in all movements, be careful not to be... I've met people, no Latvians, I've lived in Australia, I've not lived but traveled a bit in South America. I see people that are 30 years old, that yes, they have a lot of experience, they have traveled, and where from there? And there are foreigners in southern hemisphere, and they are foreigners. They are very useful because they work well, but they won't be home. And the sense of home is something that at the end of the day will be quite helpful.
I think we should probably start rounding up and opening up for questions, but I have one provocative question, so I'll probably go around the table and ask all of you. And if there's anything you still want to chip in and run yourselves apart from my question here, please feel free. One thing the ambassador just raised is that, both ambassadors just raised, the past, the mobility in the past has shaped the world as it is today. So if we think about future, let us be futurologists. Not psychologists, not lawyers, or political scientists, not ambassadors, or biologists. So let's think about future. And with the mobility as we see today, within the EU or within the Mediterranean region, how do you think? What is your idea of how will it shape the world we live in let's say, the next 500 years? Pending that there are no Armageddons falling, the world's developing smoothly and nothing. It cancel out its significant course, so let's do it in the economist's way. Ceteris paribus, if things continue as they are in 500 years, mobility as it is now.
In academia, I would be punished for making bold projections like this. And in fact, I was just looking at some research data today about migration flows in Central and Eastern Europe and how how Latvians are doing overall regarding migration, and the researchers actually had tried to make some predictions and discovered that it can't be done because it's so unpredictable, and what we expected.
Your answer.
Take it
Well,
I can say that as well.
what we expected when we have had 3 big rounds of new member states joining the EU, and with each new round we expect certain things to happen regarding migration, and almost for all of them the results have been quite different from what researchers expected. So for me it's very difficult to make a sound assumption, but I would assume that if nothing changes and if it continues the same way, I think that the European integration probably will continue, and I think people will be moving around more. What we have at the moment is that we have approximately 360 million people in Europe alone who are entitled to move around. At the moment we have roughly 3% of that. It's approximately 11 million people who will exercise that right. I think we will see this number increasing probably in the future. What we have at the moment is also a lot of third country nationals coming to Europe, and I would predict that this number will continue to rise as well. If what could change the picture probably would be certain conflicts that may or may not arise. Hopefully they won't, but if they do, I think that could then change the way this develops. But by and large, I think that the mobility will be on the rise. People will move around more.
What would you say?
This is a tough one. I read a very interesting story yesterday, and it was a story that was told about people in Madagascar, and I cannot remember the name of the people themselves, but the story was very interesting. So they live in these villages amidst the really lush forests. And what's happening now because of the deforestation and all the environmental changes, the forests are kind of leaving the area. So they start having all these kind of empty fields instead of forests. And so they start using these for rice agriculture because that's what's possible now to do. And this is something that the neighboring peoples are doing in that area. So what they're starting to do is they're starting to call themselves by the names of those people because they are becoming them, because they are losing what their kind of ways of working used to be. And for me this was a very interesting example of not what maybe the world will become, but more of the differences that we will need to be encountering more and more, that there are people that would not consider themselves as we would consider them, or people, like, there just would be a lot more of differences in opinions that we would need to learn to deal with, and this is what I see kind of the future in the next 500 years as well. I think I don't see like this homogeneous opinions emerging regarding migration or mobility or how people would decide to move or not, but I see that the differences in opinions will definitely be on the rise.
The only thing I know that I shall be moving less.
The next 500 years.
500 years.
Me too.
But for the next 20 years, and because seeing more global changes and challenges, I have to admit that my quality of life in Latvia is wonderful. I can find silence, I can find good water. Water is going to be a challenge for the whole world. And so I may imagine
We
that
have solutions.
yes, but I don't have to search for it. Just 89 kilometers and I'm swimming. And so Latvia will be a place where you can have a high quality of life in a sense, natural, as far as natural things are taken into account. Other tendencies that I've heard that the metropolis is you have 20 million inhabitants. I was in São Paulo, I hated it, never I want to go back there. So unorganized city, so it's terrible, it's not alive. So this is not what I am, what is appealing to me. Also, I remember the former French ambassador, Michel Fouché, who was a geopolitician, talked a lot about the borders, and on the borderlines you have big cities like El Paso between Mexico and the United States. So conglomerations of people. This is a tendency, but as a biologist, I see that it has no future in the sense that at the end of the day it has to break somewhere. There is, when I was 30, 35 years ago, but the stress of animals being too many in too small space is creating problems very rapidly. And I remember research on the deers in an American park, maybe Yellowstone, I don't remember. There are no more predators, so no more animals killing them. So they were actually developing exponentially, and at a certain stage they stopped to not only to develop, but they started both to decrease, and a lot of bad genes actually are spreading, also because of a higher medicinal system. It's very difficult to foresee anything, it's so complicated. I have no prediction. I am happy to live in my period, let's say, and I won't be moving that much, but I don't see how many more billions we can have, and then they will be moving. There will be, if we are lucky enough to see a couple of global warming going to Siberia will be more accessible. Chinese will go there, etc. You can. There is a fantastic writer, Lebanese, Amin Maalouf, writing about those global challenges. I don't remember the book, but if you want to read a good book about the Mediterranean Sea and mobility, read Léon l'Africain, Léon the African. It's a fantastic roman about the end of after 1492, by the way. But so I'm not a good futurologist. I really don't. I am very down to earth.
And I will tell you why I cannot predict the future. Not because it's unpredictable.
It's not predicting. It's really imagining.
So I'll tell you why it's very hard even to imagine, because I really believe that we shape the future, and it's really up to us in our generation what we will do that will shape the history. And it's very hard to tell. It really depends if we do good or if we do bad, or if we do enough or not enough, if we accept the changes, if we accept the challenges, how do we relate to that, do we integrate the foreigners, do we isolate them? And it's regarding the same questions. This is why it's very hard to answer the questions, because we today shape what we'll see. And I hope that we will know how to face the challenges. Right now, it doesn't look very optimistic, maybe because I'm coming from the Middle East, so it doesn't look very optimistic the way Europe treated the Middle East. But really, I really believe that it's up to us. So still, there is a lot of light at the end of the channel. Tell.
Prediction by extrapolation is impossible. It's always wrong. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, but I remember about you were talking about the migration, and migration needed for the European Union in 2050 to maintain the same level of living standards was 70 million immigrants. That means 100 million with all the families, which is quite impossible. So here, the way for Europe should be to renounce to a lot of privileges, which will happen maybe anyway. socially. It's very nice to live in France and Germany, but you know, it costs a lot.
So with that optimistic note,
No, we save money. This is what.
optimistic note, and the conclusion that we cannot predict the future. We even find it hard to imagine when it comes to mobility and how that would or could shape the future of Europe or the Mediterranean or even the world. I think that if you noticed, then it was actually on purpose. We did not touch the matter of geopolitics and borders. Let's say even politics as such. We didn't mention EU and Middle East now and then. It was more of a social. And the point of the discussion was, or the goal, to revert to the individual instead of talking about the mobility and policies, mobility in economics, mobility large scale, mobility in macroeconomics, etc., etc. And interestingly enough, the discussion concluded on the personal. It is us who will shape how mobility influences all of us personally, but also the society that we live in, and Europe in general, the society, and if you will, the world in 500 years or less or more. There are some things that I wrote down, at least I tried to write down, but there were so many good ideas. I was falling short of time to write that, but one of the things is that Ambassador said that not to lose yourself while wandering, trying and finding your home. There is a Latvian, not a fairy tale, but a story, a fairy tale for children. Sprīdīt is a little boy who went to find the happiness. His happiest place was to return home. And I think it's a lot of sentiment.
I think it's in every nation,
it's
same story. Yeah, no?
It's very human.
Yes, yeah.
I think it's plagiarism and dates back to
Yeah.
But to be serious, you can see this note. It is about finding or remembering your home and not being uprooted always, and finding the beauty of traveling and being mobile, but also returning. And interestingly though, there are conflicting policies. There is one about being mobile, another about bringing people back home. It's a paradox in itself. There was also a wonderful thought about mobility breeding a certain chaos, and then somebody needed to put it all in order, chaos being the force for development. And if we look back 500 years or thousands of years, you can see how this chaos of mobility and movement shaped who we are today, including our borders, our countries, and the way we think and perceive ourselves and others. And with a failing attempt, I should say, to imagine the future, I would also like to open this discussion for the audience. Maybe you have a take on this. How would it look? Any questions to the panelists amongst yourselves? Or in the context of the film, as well as the events that you're still to experience, and I hope to be part of some of the discussions and events that take place in the festival. So the floor is yours now. If you want to add something distracting, please. So can we move then to the social part of discussions with coffees, teas, and...
No, but I have a question.
No, you do have a
question.
question.
I want to check if someone else has. I mean, despite the fact that the discussion was already really personal, I still would like to challenge you to maybe name one real example when this mobility of experience or knowledge or what you have got from Hagita, you from Latvians, or Liga, you from Jordans when you've been traveling, or from Turkish, when real example when you face that this experience or this knowledge or this situation really maybe brought me some difference in my behaving, or where I perceive some things. If there is any particular experience, if not, maybe the bigger picture, bigger example, for example, about this, like the mobility brings the change in your personal level, kind of like this. Yeah, I don't know if I've made myself clear.
So, personal or professional or
if you could drive, if you can distinguish personal, it's nice. If you can distinguish professional as well, it's like up to you, but like really like something touchy.
because I have very good example. It's personal but also professional, and I learn from everywhere. You know, everyone that I meet and everywhere I go. But here I had an experience that I didn't experience not in the Philippines, not in Turkey, not in Israel. And it goes to the different of mentalities between the Israelis and the Latvians. The Latvians are very close. You cannot, when you face someone, when you have discussions or business discussion or just any discussion, you really don't know what the other side feels. It's totally the opposite when you discuss it with people from Israel or from the Middle East, because immediately you know how we feel, because it is shown. You know how I'm excited now, and with the body language and everything. When you speak to Latvians, it's like really 180 degrees the opposite. And it happened to me when I was in an official meeting with 10 senior Latvians, and I was talking very enthusiastically about bilateral exchange and cooperation. Everything was super, super positive. And I was thanking everyone and each of the people who were in front of me. And one of them I was thanking especially about the way they treated, his institution was treated some incident which was good, contributed. And as I'm speaking to him, I feel with his body language, at least what I understood, that something is totally wrong. He was making like faces and like this. I immediately understood that I did something totally wrong. And as I'm speaking, I'm trying to finish immediately the presentation because I feel that I lost this institution, which was very important for bilateral relations between the two states. So at the end, I finished it and said, okay, so thank you very much. And I moved to the other one and speaking again about cooperation. And when we finished the panel, I told my colleague, I think I totally ruined here the relationship. We need immediately to think how we can recover, because we really need this institution to future cooperation. And I was really upset because I didn't know what I did wrong. And okay, we signed an agreement with all the senior officials, and we raised the toast. It was champagne, everyone were happy. And I'm thinking, okay, how do I fix my mistake? And then when I stood just aside, came this guy. He's not young, he's just official, and he was holding my hand with both his hands, saying, "Thank you so much. You were so great. You were speaking." So it took me a while just to understand what he's speaking. I was shocked. I was totally shocked. I didn't expect such a reaction because he reflected to me something totally different. I think that this experience totally opened myself. I thought I'm open to different, but this incident showed me that I'm still not that open. That I should be very open to get all kind of reaction and to know immediately that what I see, it's not what I think. And this is a very important lesson because we usually I tell this to the people everywhere we go. What you see in media, it's not what you think. Everywhere what you think about Israel it's not what you know or what you could see if you go there. And I realized that what I see is not always what I think is not always what I see, and vice versa. So it was very, very interesting experience. And if I wouldn't move to Latvia, I wouldn't experience such experience, and I think made me more open to the society and expecting the differences between us.
If I may, I have three things I would like to say. One is reacting to what you were saying about the Latvian character. In 2003, the chairwoman of the executive council of the UNESCO came to Latvia I was ambassador to the UNESCO to visit actually our song festival. And she, fantastic woman, she's from Morocco, ambassador of Morocco to the UNESCO, elected as a chairwoman. And we were at the cultural concert, last concert, And after only 2.5 hours, she said, Mr. Lapuk, I have to ask you something. She was getting nervous. At her smile said, yes, what about? We are here more than 2 hours. There are tens of thousands of people and children, and no one child cries.
That's true.
And I laughed and said, well, you know, they're probably listening to the music. And then when we left, because there was a VIP car, we left, 10,000 of people leaving, and no mingling. So this is where I am proud to be a Latvian. There is a respect of the intimate sphere of the other one, not like in your countries where you touch all the time. And you don't know whether you want it or not. You are touched, you are getting touched, and maybe you know, Latvian, sometimes you look at on bus line, on bus stops, Latvian like bird, every 1 meter. This is what we are. And another two of the things that put into philosophical frame, I have two experiences that changed me. When I finished school, I was 16, and in France. Then my father asked me, "Do you want to go to the United States?" Of course, I wanted. So I worked with 3 weeks to earn money when I was there with his best friend. And then I went around 3 months. I was around, and I was in Brooklyn as well, in Washington, Denver, etc. And it was the time when the United States started the positive discrimination. If you, well, you don't remember, but you know about this thing. And I understood something, that it is very good to have good ideas, but it is fundamentally wrong to believe that it will work easily in the United States. It is the cradle of the capitalism, and you impose 10 or 20% of people who are not competent. There was a total antinomy of the decision made, which is intellectually absolutely correct, what it looks like, but within the system it was not natural and very badly integrated. Now, 40 years later, they're talking about getting rid of it, and things have changed, and there are a lot of black people managing. But in those days, there was a conflict. And then the second, I went to live to Australia in 1982. I was a European. So very clever, of course. And the people are very friendly in Australia. It's fantastic. You can't live better than there. But I was bored. I was a European after all. But what I learned from there is that don't judge, and this is something that in diplomacy you need, and I have used it, but it was shaped in 1983 to 85, let's say. I understood that what doesn't please you in one nation is linked with what pleases you in that nation. You can't pick what you want, impossible. You have the whole package. You have to take the nation, the foreign nation, as it is. You can't be only with what you want and say, no, this I don't want. That does not exist. This is why probably it's easier for me to be a Latvian, because I'm aware of what I don't like about myself. I live with that every day, and it's not easy, but still, this is with me I want to live. So those three things, and also so this Madame Benani has put that into a frame why your children are not crying during the concert. Yes, because that's how we are built.
To cry.
To respect, to have some intimacy, etc. And there is a very
in
good...
the Middle East, you just express your feeling immediately.
No, but I identify very accurately with that. This is why I have not been a French citizen after all, French inhabitants. This, I think, so it goes to your infancy. I'm sure of that.
Inga, how about your experiences? Lessons
I can go. I was thinking about which one of my experiences should I share and which one has impacted me most, and I hope you don't mind if it's going to be quite a personal one, because I think it really affected me very much. when I first thought of going abroad to study, I was in a bit of a conflict with myself because I used to think of myself as someone who would never leave, that I would always stay in Latvia. I've always been somewhat patriotic, you would say, more so in certain periods of my life and less so in others, but still. And then I still nevertheless thought it's a good thing to go abroad for a while to see who I really am when I'm not at home. And then I was, my family and my friends were quite surprised at this decision, and I found myself contemplating, is this the right thing to do, or is this the wrong thing to do? Maybe I shouldn't go, maybe this is not what a true Latvian does, maybe I should then come back after half a year or so. And I ended up staying for 5 years in total, doing my whole study period in the United Kingdom. And while I was there, I was still thinking about whether I should be coming back and when should I come back and how should I do it. And at one point, I had a good relationship with an honorary consul to Scotland. And he's a very bright man, and he cares a lot about Latvian diaspora in Scotland. And every year he's holding a reception on 18th of November, and then everyone that he knows of who lives and studies in Scotland can come and take part. And I went there. I think it was probably the first or the second year when I was studying there, and everyone was invited to perform something, either sing a song or recite a poem. And I figured, okay, so I'm going, I have to perform somehow. And I recited a poem and I did a little speech. And what happened afterwards was probably one of the things that changed me very much, is that people started coming up to me, people who had lived in Scotland for not only years but decades. There were really people of all generations, and they wanted to hear about my journey, how I'm feeling when I'm abroad. And they were so different. Each and every one of them had a completely different opinion on whether it's right or wrong to leave, whether you have to come back or whether it's okay to stay somewhere else if you find it more appropriate. And I think since then I've stopped trying to determine whether something is right or wrong in these terms, and I'm trying to see what life can offer me at that particular point. At the end of the day, it so happened that I am now back here, and for the time being, I'm very happy with where I am. Definitely, if you had asked me a couple of years ago, perhaps you would have heard a different answer. But I think that the way this story links together with what we've been discussing today is that it is indeed a very personal journey, and the sense of belonging can change over time, and people can affect that, and your home country can affect that by welcoming you back. I guess that for me, it's definitely the many stories that I heard that changed my opinion.
Mine will be a very simple story, in a sense that it's not going to maybe be as deep in understanding myself, but a story of necessity, and it comes from Mongolia, since that's what I've been writing about for the last few weeks. And the story goes, we went with my friend, we went hitchhiking in Mongolia, which is a place with really tough infrastructure. I mean, there's not really paved roads, so you go on these dirt tracks for miles and miles, and 30 kilometers per hour at that speed. And so we were going and reaching the place, which was 1,000 kilometers away. It took us a few days, and obviously we needed a place to stay overnight. And we realized that basically just standing there somewhere among the gears or in the small towns doesn't really help. Because we had heard that in Mongolia, in order to get hosted or to have a place to sleep, you simply have to enter somebody's house, which are normally not locked. You sit down, they give you tea, you drink your tea, and then once you've drank your tea, you tell them what you would like from them. And then if they serve you another cup of tea, that's okay, you can stay. We had heard this, but obviously myself coming from Latvia and my friend coming from France, not really. So the few nights we actually spent in tents until we decided, okay, today we try. And so we did, and well, obviously it happened, and we entered and we stayed and we were served lots of tea, and it was all good. But just this first step of actually doing something that is so much against everything you kind of know is polite. Sometimes it's tough, but it helps.
Can I share one of my own? Because I just listening that I think one, I have to admit that working for the Foreign Investors Council has sedentarized me. I don't travel as much. Before that, I was very mobile. And one of those experiences quite a while ago was, I think I was then an intern in a conference center, a large international conference center in Switzerland, up in the mountains. And there were several dozens nationalities from all parts of the world. And what I did, I was responsible for a pantry. And the pantry it's a place where you serve the food. So you cook it and then you serve it. And those are two different places, they should never mix. And Swiss has very strict hygiene rules, so everybody has to abide. And if you work in the pantry, you don't go to the kitchen and vice versa. So nobody comes into the pantry from anywhere else. So it's just the people who are supposed to be there. And I was responsible for the place. I'm there and all of a sudden I enter it and I see a man at the fridge open, and there's a fridge full of milk. And now there are supplies to serve coffee and things. So, and I see that he's not on the team helping to serve, and everybody's interning, so there are participants at the conference helping to serve coffees and teas. And I see him opening the doors of the fridge, and I know that he's not on the team that I'm supposed to lead today. So I politely tell him that, well, if you would excuse me, you shouldn't be here. It's, it's a closed space. And he was, well, he wasn't very senior, but certainly older than myself. And we never properly talked to each other, neither then nor afterwards. So I don't know where exactly he came from. I believe it was somewhere either in Northern Africa or something, so that part of the world. But so he closes the fridge slowly, looks at me and says, "Are you teaching me a lesson?" And I tell him, "No, but it's just house rules. You shouldn't be here. That's what we all signed when we came in here." So, "Do you realize that you're younger than myself?" And I said, "Yes." "And that you're a woman?" And I said, "Yes." This conversation was finished. He just slammed the doors, went out, and he went complaining that I had talked bad to him. I wasn't supposed to do that. I had no, authority in the house, etc. But the house people they know the house rules, they made them themselves, so they said that she was actually right. But it wasn't solved, not between us. And he was walking past me all the days that he was staying there. We never conversed again. And a couple of years later, I went back there, and I did something else. I was organizing again. And I went to an elevator, and I was walking up and down, moving up or down, and all of a sudden the door opens of the elevator, and he comes in. And we look at each other, and this is a very awkward moment. We never finished this conversation about who was being welcoming and who wasn't. He looks at me and says, "I think I did something wrong a couple of years ago. And I just wanted to apologize." So to me, it probably was, I don't know how to comment on that. And I said, it's okay, it's no problem, it's an open place, an open house, everybody's open and mobile, etc. But it was a shock. I really didn't know what to do.
Oh my God.
And all, amongst all the stories of Central Asias and Russias, and this small thing in Switzerland, up in the mountains, has probably defined my understanding of ability and open-mindedness. And our ability to change.
Oh my God, my stories.
So this is my concluding story of mobilities and how it changed. It really did change something. I'm not able to pinpoint what exactly, but just what had happened. It did happen. So with that, I think we can conclude.
Wow.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being part. And I can only, on behalf of the organizers, not being very much aware of what will take place in the coming days, apart from reading the program a couple of times. But to meet you in the events to come and next year as well.